Hey, everybody. Come on in. Welcome to Jon Ferrian Live. We have a very special episode for you guys tonight. And so we'll give it just a little bit of time. We'll kind of do a little bit of a soft warm up here, let some people come on in. But if you're starting to see this right away, do me a favor, do yourself a favor, do your friends a favor. Get this shared out. We're going to want to get this message out to a lot of folks across the country. It's a very pertinent topic of what we're going to try and address tonight is, how do you end up in a day of backcountry riding without your beacon on at the end of the day? I know it's happened to me. I'm pretty sure it's happened to my buddy Brian here that's sitting beside me, and we'll get into that in just a little bit. But let's go ahead and have you guys, as you're watching, we've got a lot of viewers coming in right away. Please, 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 in the comments, drop in where you're watching from right now. And what'll happen then is it'll pop up with your name. It'll pop up with your location so we know where you're watching from. And so again, this is a special bonus edition of Jon Ferrian Live. We're going to do things a little differently tonight than we normally do. There's no like warm-up music, prepping music. We're going to just kind of get right to the point of what we're going to talk about tonight. And I want to share with all of you guys as you're dropping in the comments, where you're from, where you're watching from. What I want to do is introduce you to my good friend, Brian Lundstedt from Tyler's Backcountry Awareness. I've known Brian here for, I don't know how many years has it been? I haven't been keeping track, but it's got to be close to 5 years, I think, that we've known of each other at least and bumped into each other at heydays here and there. So tell the folks hi and let them know a little bit about yourself.
How's it going, everybody? Hi, John. And yeah, it's been, who's keeping track, right?
Exactly. Time flies when you're having fun, right?
Yeah. I'm obviously Brian with Tyler's Backcountry Awareness, and we do avalanche education solely for motorized users. And we're here to talk about the events that happened this week.
Yeah, and as all of you guys know who are watching this, our industry here was taken pretty by storm. It was Friday night. There was a late evening avalanche that involved professional snowmobile rider Rob Kincaid. And, Brian and I both talked about this a little bit before the show. And neither of us were probably, super close to Rob. I had bumped into him at heydays before, probably shook his hand, but didn't know him on a really personal level. Brian, what was your interactions with Rob up to this point? Similar?
Yeah, very, very similar. Being in the industry, you get to know people, but definitely wasn't having dinner with him.
Yeah, yeah. But, regardless of that, I would tell you that both Brian and I have a tremendous amount of respect for who Rob was, both as a father, as a husband, family man, friend to all of those involved. And it's super obvious that the impact that he's made across the industry, both with Arctic Cat as well as just across the industry as a whole, has been super impactful. And as I've been seeing social media, there's been questions popping up and there's a lot of speculation around, how do you end up riding a day in the backcountry without a beacon on? And I know it's happened to me, and I'll share my personal stories tonight of how it's happened and, what went wrong, what went right. We're not here to, uncover and speculate too much on what did or didn't happen in Rob's situation. Ultimately, we don't know, and so we're not going to speculate. But what I can tell you is, what has happened to me and the routines that we go through to try to avoid that scenario and, in other situations as well. And so with that, Brian, what I'll do is I'll just share that, I've been riding mountains since 2007 and originally from Minnesota, and started riding my first rides in Cook City, Montana. Some of the craziest, avalanche terrain in the country literally was my first riding experiences. And the first ride I ever had, we rented a beacon. We're, not super aware of how to use it even, but we had one on and kind of checked that box, right? Not really knowing what kind of danger we were in at that time. And then as time evolved, I had different avalanche beacons and I'd get used to it. And just in the recent, I don't know, maybe in the last 3 to 4 years or so, I found myself personally at 2 different occasions where I have found where I got to the end of my riding day. And as I went to take my avalanche beacon off, I went in there to turn it off and discovered that it was not even on. And both of the scenarios that I had was, definitely out of my normal routine. And there was 2 different scenarios, right? The first one was where we had done a beacon check in the morning, and I had what was it? I'm trying to remember. There's 2 different scenarios, but like regardless of which one it was, I went to shut my beacon off. Like I had gotten a new beacon, is what it was. We had done the beacon, and I'd done the transceiver check, and I went to turn my beacon back from search to transmit. It was a Tracker 3 model where the button is all, search, transmit, and off is all one single button, and it rotates into 3 different positions. And I went from a Tracker 2 where it was 2 separate buttons and rotating it, right? And so as you rotate it, I actually went all the way to off instead of transmit and put it away, thinking I had just put it back into transmit. Rode all day unaware of, what happened. A different time, it was where I was just not in my routine. I had my beacon on, got in a hurry, got going, didn't have a normal pre-ride check in the morning that we'd normally do, and rode all day and came back down. And it's embarrassing for me to know that that had happened to me. Specifically 2 times that stick out for me. And in both cases, it was something that was out of my routine. And I think the times that I look back and I think, like, why does it go right most of the time? It's because most of the time the crew that I ride with, we do a kind of and every day we do a pre-ride check, a safety little discussion around avalanche awareness. We do a beacon check, and we go through a process. And some of those things that we just mentioned there are things that I know you and I talked about on the phone, and we want to go into tonight a little bit. So, with that, I'd love to have you walk us through maybe what experiences you've had similar first, and then we'll go into what a professional avalanche instructor would tell everybody is a pre-ride safety process and inspection that would be recommended for most folks to be able to avoid this.
Yeah, for sure. I'd like to start by saying, with what got me or led me to be an avalanche professional was the loss of my brother in 2012, in a situation that, um, was different than what Rob's family is going through. And so I don't know how they're coping, but my heart goes out to their family. And like you started saying in the beginning, the most important thing is we can talk about it, we can learn from it, we can grow from it. Even if we're not exactly right on the details, we're addressing the kind of the talk around town, what's being said. Well, how can we address it in a positive way that we can all learn from and grow from? And to me, that's very important. So I would like to just express that and say thanks for having me here. I feel like that routine that we all get into is a very good routine as long as we don't fall out of it. Um, I'm no saint. I've definitely made my errors in the backcountry, both pre-trip and out in the field. And let's be realistic. I probably will again, no matter how hard I try not to and try to do what I know to do. We are human and we make mistakes. I know exactly what you're talking about with the Tracker 3, how it's all in one button. It happens. And for me, it happens when I'm teaching someone how to do a trailhead check and I'm talking, and I get done doing the trailhead check for the first time and I'm interrupted and I just go right off and I stow my beacon and then I go ride. And it's like you pull your beacon out later and it's like, oh no, that could have been very bad. Luckily, like I've developed a way that for me works really good, which if I'm talking and interrupted or horsing around or whatever, when I'm at the end of my beacon check, I put it right in front of my friend's face and I go back to transmit, like right in front of them, so that somebody can hold me accountable. And they've caught me. They've caught me going all the way off on some other beacons with, like the Orta box. It's got a button on the bottom, and then you pop it on the top to get it into search. But coming off the BCA, I'll still find myself, instead of pushing the button in like I'm supposed to, I flip the button on the bottom because my brain is doing other stuff. So I think one key takeaway would be, it's a key life-saving point in your day if if there's any way that you can just slow down just a second and hold your story for just a minute while you change your beacon from transmit to receive. I'm sorry, from receive to transmit, and then stow that beacon. Then go on about heckling somebody for waking up late or
Yeah.
riding a wrong sled or whatever.
Give them a little brand bashing or something like that for riding the wrong sled, right? It's like, but yeah, no, there's a lot to that, and I would tell you that, I mean, Brian, you're a professional instructor and you're constantly on the mountain. I would bet most of your days on the winter, probably most of them, I would say easily, are probably on snow avalanche training classes versus probably riding, right? You're doing some riding versus, in those training classes, but the bulk of your time is there. And so you have a lot going on. And as an instructor, and there's a lot of pressure on you to quote unquote do it the right way. But even in that scenario that you just described, it's easy to get distracted by like maybe somebody just tripped over their shovel for a second as you're doing it and you kind of like not paying attention for a minute. And speaking from my own experience in training classes, there's a lot of turn your beacon on, turn your beacon off, turn it off so that everybody else can do a search mode, and let's test this and let's test that. And so there's a lot of manipulation of your beacon that's not normal for a normal, ride day that people have. So from my position, you're probably in a more difficult situation to remember this every day too. But I think the thing that you've addressed and highlighted here, and the thing that I brought up is a daily routine for a normal ride day. And I'd love to have you, what do you cover in your avalanche training classes that you have in Tyler's Backcountry Awareness when people are there? What kind of instruction do you give people on what's the routine that you would recommend going into a normal ride day?
So of course, you've got your pre-trip stuff like picking your group and looking at the bulletin for the area that you plan to go to. Um, I check all my gear before I leave the house. Just a quick run through. I don't power anything up, but do I have my radio? Do I have my beacon? Do I have my bag, shovel, probe? Do I have my boots and my underwear? The important stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Once we're at the trailhead, we've kind of checked all those boxes, and now while we're getting geared up on a normal ride day, it might be something that just happens in the trailer. A quick, everyone when they turn their beacon on calls out their battery percentage, and our thing forever has been whoever the last person to get their beacon on has to be the leader in the beacon check.
Nice.
So the trailhead check, everyone calls out their percentages of battery. Everybody goes into search, except for the leader. He stays in transmit. He gets kind of around to everybody. Keep distance. You don't need to touch the beacons. You don't, the latest information says a foot. So don't get closer than a foot.
Okay.
You just kind of get close. Make sure you see a low number that's representative of how far away you are. And you check everybody. And then the beacon leader is going to join everybody else in search. And that's a really important part of the beacon check, because when all the beacons are in search, you should hear silence.
Yeah.
And if you don't hear silence, you could have a mechanical failure of a beacon. So even though you switched the button, it's not really electronically going into search instead of transmit. And if we had an accident, we'd be chasing John around topside, right?
Yeah.
So we want to hear that silence. After we hear the silence, then we can have everyone else go back to transmit and start stowing their gear. And your beacon leader is going to go around one more time. And this time, everyone's looking at his screen and making sure that there's a number low enough that they're comfortable with it. Again, keep that, 1 foot spacing.
Yeah.
You can do it either way. Like some groups really like to start out with just the beacon leader in search.
Yeah.
Some, my groups, I always teach, put everyone else in search.
Okay.
Because at the end of the whole process, you only have one person making a button switch, as opposed to, like in one of our classes, maybe like 12 people making a button switch.
Yep.
You just reduce that chance of human error and screwing up because you've gone around and found everybody.
Yeah. No, that's a great call out.
So we like to teach it that way. Once you get through your beacon check, then that's usually after everyone switches to transmit, they can start stowing their beacon, zipping up their coat, putting their gloves on, whatever. It's a nice little transition time. And there's only one person who has to finish getting ready, right?
Yep.
And so radio checks are really good at that time. And then it's time to hit the trail. And if your trail has a trailhead check, like a "Are you beeping" sign,
Yep.
That's not a replacement for a trailhead beeping check. That is like a last ditch, last check. That's making sure I didn't accidentally switch my button to off after that trailhead check.
Yeah.
Some of them will check for certain things that won't get picked up in a normal trailhead check.
Okay.
like signal frequency drift, which is a leading contributor to reduced searchable size.
Okay.
Um, Others are just telling you, are you on or are you not on, for whatever reason. And so they are a good tool, but they are not a replacement, in my opinion. And when people are educated about their use properly, I think that that's when they really shine.
Yep. Yep. So there's a question I know that's in the comments here, Brian, that I'll read to you, and I know it's very similar to the post that you and I come across each other this morning on, right? And I'll just read this question verbatim here. It says, "I'm a flatlander and would love to get into the mountains one day, but here's my question." It says, why can't a beacon or a transceiver have a failsafe? I don't know, just asking. And I know the question this morning in the post this morning that you and I bumped into each other on was somebody had made the comment that hey, a beacon should just automatically turn on when you put it on, right? And it was kind of, you take it at face value, the question here as well as the post this morning, and like, immediately you're kind of like, well, it's not a horrible idea, but there's upside, there's downside. I think there's discussion we just had around routines and what that means. Complacency, where are you storing your beacon? Is it going to be in your Avi bag, in your front pocket versus is it actually on you in a harness? There's a lot of variables there too. And so I'd love to have you kind of tackle that topic if you don't mind.
So, I mean, realistically, for the appropriate answer, I'd say we'd need to have a group chat with about 5 or 6 manufacturers and let them tell us.
Yeah.
Um, from my opinion, like the old Ortovox stuff, I know for sure, and a couple of the other brands too. I think when you put the harness, like to assemble the harness,
Yep.
like flipped in and quarter turned, and that was also the power switch.
I think that's what people are referring to in some cases. Yep.
So some severe limitations were like now a lot of gear comes with specific pockets
Yeah.
for that piece of equipment that doesn't utilize the factory harness.
Exactly. Yep.
So you get away from being able to use that gear. And like on those old order box units, the waist strap was the strap that was the power switch.
Okay.
So you could like tilt your beacon down, but you couldn't really stretch it out and get it away.
Okay.
So, nice stretchy lanyards make it so that we can maneuver quicker and more efficiently in the backcountry when we're doing a search.
Yeah.
Um, I just feel like there's some limitations, and that if it was a solid idea, people would have probably gone with it. When they had the idea back in the day.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like asking your beacon to know that you're going snowmobiling in the backcountry right
Yeah.
now versus riding in the car versus chilling out in the closet
Yeah.
is kind of a lot. It would also distract people from a very important key to the beacon check, which is checking your battery percentage.
Exactly.
So if you're leaving the trailhead with low battery percentage, and your beacon automatically turns on, like who's going to pay attention to that? And I feel like that could be a bigger issue.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, and I think, I mean, I saw other comments in the post this morning kind of similar. It's like, well, there's always going to be some scenario where even though it's built to do this, like it's just not going to be realistic or feasible or even work to some degree. Like what if that harness, maybe the button or the lock mechanism isn't quite seated and you think you have it seated and it's on, so there's always there, it's hard to beat just having a routine. Sometimes something as simple as, you know, do you put fuel in your sled the night before the ride or the morning of the ride? What's your routine, Brian?
Uh,
Or does it depend, right?
it depends on the weather.
Okay. And so,
On the mountain, we'll spend like a week or two on the mountain.
yeah.
And if it's nasty and supposed to let up, I'll fuel in the morning.
Okay.
And if it's looking like a storm's coming, I'll fuel in the night. If
Yep.
we got off the mountain really late and it's dark and I'm hungry, I'm gonna fuel in the morning. So I go either way on fuel and oil.
Yeah.
But I always, regardless of when I do it, I always check my oil level and my fuel level,
Before you
like
go out. Yeah.
kind of that last step before I jump on my machine. Like it's usually sitting there running. I look
Yep.
at my fuel gauge, I open my panel, I look at my oil, like
Yeah.
tap tap, let's go. Like it's for me, yeah, it's kind of a weird scenario because I kind of live on the mountain so much.
Yeah, I can tell you for somebody like myself who, most of my trips are day trips, right? Like for me, my goal and my thing is like I'm doing all my pre-check stuff the night before, right? Like I'm getting my gear packed, my bag packed, everything's sitting by the entryway ready to go out the door except for what I'm going to wear. And then, sleds are already fueled and oiled before they even get loaded on the truck because that's my routine before I go out. And it always amazes me when I get to the mountain and someone shows up with, less than a half a tank of fuel, or they're up in the mountain and we're up eating lunch and they're like, oh, anybody got any extra oil with them? To me, I make that comparison because it's like, it's very rare that people go up to the mountains and aren't prepared with fuel and oil for their sleds, right? It's part of their routine. It's part of the process of getting ready. I've shown up without a jacket before. How about you? You ever shown up without a riding jacket?
Yeah.
Yep. And so guess what? You're borrowing one from somebody else.
I think you'll find that I've forgotten more.
Yeah. And really what I'm driving at is routine really drives, thing. And like for yourself, if it's not a bad thing, like I know the Lake Tahoe area has what they call like, I think they call it like a run list or something like that. But like there's actually a sticker that the Tahoe area sledders have created and made to you can slap on your sled, and it's kind of like a just to check the avalanche conditions, be safe, check your beacon, all that kind of stuff, and it's kind of your checklist, if you will. And so I would encourage everybody watching, if you don't already have a checklist or a process list that you have to go through it. And sometimes it's as simple as just standing at the front door before you go and kind of closing your eyes for a second, going like, okay, I packed my helmet, I packed my goggles, I packed my balaclava, I packed my, and I go through, like I touch the parts of my body that I would be wearing, and I'm remembering, did I throw it in the bag? Did I throw it in the bag? And that's my routine I go through every time too. And it's,
Like if
it's
I
just,
can, and I start at my boots,
yeah, yeah,
and I go base layer to outside layer. So it's socks, boots,
yep,
uh, pants, coat, shirt, vest, coat,
yep.
uh, helmet, goggles. And if I can't remember it's in the bag,
Then you
like
tear it apart and you look.
then I have to touch it before I know. And I do the
Yeah,
exact same thing, just we go the opposite way.
yeah, yeah. No, exactly.
Be really, really good, but they can also be, a bias that lets us get out of our norm and fall apart. Like one of the guys talked this morning, about what if you're meeting someone from a different trailhead? So like in northern Colorado, there's like 3 trailheads or 4 trailheads that people from different parts of the state might start at, and
Okay,
they'll meet up at the top
okay,
and then ride for the day. It's like a 15-minute ride from any trailhead type of a deal.
okay.
And so, like the question is like, how do you do a trailhead check if your group isn't with you and you're not leaving, and you're leaving from like this spot out in the field? It's simple. When you meet up with your, when before you go out, you turn your beacon on. It looks like it's working. Okay, great. You go by the beacon checkpoint if you have one. Even better. Then when you get connected with your group, you go, hey guys, I haven't had a chance to do a beacon trailhead check. Can we
Yeah,
check it real quick? And
perfect.
let's blaze through that. It'll take a minute. If your friends aren't down to do that for you, then maybe they're not the friends you want to ride with, I guess. I don't know. I
Yeah,
wouldn't. But
yeah,
we do the
but
same thing, like you were talking about in our classes, in a level 1 and a level 2, in a rescue class, there is just constant, like on, off, on, search, on, off, search, like just all over the board. And then we have like berry bags that we're having extra beacons in that we're burying in the snow. And like the last thing I ever want to do is forget one of those on my tunnel and then get caught in an avalanche, right? And
yeah,
have
yeah,
everybody in class go find my sled for me.
yep,
Um, so what we do and what we tell, what we coach people to do is like when you go out and practice, in the spring or in the fall, I watch a lot of your posts and videos with your son and your wife, right?
yep, yep,
So you go out for a ride and today's the day we're going to do beacon practice. Do your beacon practice. And then when you get done, have somebody in your group do another trailhead check.
yeah,
It takes a minute, and then you're sure that all the beacons are in the right place and they're all still working, even though we've mechanically switched them a whole bunch.
yeah.
And so that's what we do.
Nice.
and it's in like my protocol with like the state for my permits that like anytime that I go into search for like a practice or for a real search event, before I remove my group from the forest, we're gonna go through that trailhead check.
Yeah.
It's just a layer of protection.
Yeah, and it really is the routine of going through that trailhead check religiously. And I think you're in the same boat I am, where you're constantly out on the mountain with different people. A lot of times it's for your trainings and your avalanche training that's there. For me, it's through clubs and just people that I ride with constantly. It's always circulating different new people through there, and so it's become just so routine for me to be able to do a trailhead check, and I do it kind of just similar to you, but I'm not doing it professionally, but with the desire to kind of teach and educate and to kind of set the example for people in the community as they're learning the backcountry, they're learning to get out and be a mountain rider. And, that routine is so important. And what I think happens in many, many cases, and I think most people who ride are in a situation where they're riding with the same group of people every single week. And there becomes a level of comfort, a level of complacency to some degree that, you know what, Brian, you and I ride every single week. We're always the same two buds. We're going to go out and we're going to shred hard every weekend. And, we've checked it over and over and over, and we're always good, right? Like you got yours on, I got mine on, we're good to go. And we become a little bit familiar with the terrain. Sometimes the avalanche conditions in our mind are, very familiar because we see yellow, green, or I had an episode just about a month ago here where that was the case here locally. We had somebody who they looked at the avalanche forecast and they saw the color. They saw yellow and green, and they were like, "Game on! It's time to go." And they went up there, and what they didn't do is they didn't read that. Oh my gosh, there's wind slabs above the alpine. The elevation of alpine. Once you're above tree line, there's wind slabs you got to watch for, and you could trigger them, and they could be pretty big. And that's exactly what he got into. And in hindsight, being 2020, he went back into the avalanche forecast and read it, and was like just super eye opening, going like, "Oh my God, did I screw up?" And we had an episode on that just a while back. And I think we get into this same routine where it's like we're just comfortable. We're with the same people. We're in the same riding areas, and we don't take that step and that protocol to go through these safety checks because sometimes it probably feels a little cheesy. But you know what? Sometimes, speaking for myself, I've messed up. I've missed my day when I fall out of my routine. And it's always those days that you get out of your routine. It's the days that you make those mistakes. And if you're very consistently 99% of the time doing those routines and doing those safety, pre-ride checks, 99% of the time you're going to be fine. And even then, the 1% you don't check it, there's a good chance you're still going to hit it because you're so familiar with it because it's so habitual. So,
Yeah. You know, I feel like we can make thousands of mistakes and get away with them.
yep.
And we never know what the consequences would have been if, one little variable had changed in the mistake that we made so much in the backcountry. It's some people come to class and they say things like, have to try and get their buddies to buy in on anything from the trailhead check or the checking the bulletin or deciding on what kind of train that we're going to block out or allow for the day, right?
Yep.
To me, it's never been that way. We have been me and my brothers and my dad were doing trailhead checks in the 90s. It was just something we always did. We always held each other accountable. It's just a good way to remind each other, like, hey, check your battery. Hey, check to make sure your beacon's on, right? Because there's somebody prompting you to do it. Like somebody else already yelled out the battery percentage.
Yep.
And I guess, like, in my opinion, if my friends thought I was nerdy and didn't want to do it, I'd probably ride with different people.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a selfish thing, like I take it seriously because me knowing that your beacon works allows me to know that you can find me.
Absolutely.
And that's what, for me, for a long time, that's the only way I looked at it.
Yep.
And now, for the last long time, I've been on the other side of the fence. I don't want to call your wife. I don't want to call your son. I don't want to tell them that, we made a mistake and that I couldn't bring you off the mountain alive and to see him again,
Yeah.
And so people can call me cheesy and people can tell me it wastes time, and that doesn't matter because at the end of the day, I can go ride another day. We can go ride another week. We can go ride another season, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and taking that, somebody on the internet this morning said like, take 5 minutes to do a trailhead check, and I had to really bite my tongue and be like, quit being a liar. A trailhead check takes like a minute and a half
Yeah.
with 12 people. Like, people, it takes like no time at all. But I knew what the point was.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's, I just kind of wanted to like point out to people on the internet, it's like, it doesn't take 5 minutes. It takes way less. Like,
Yeah.
just do it easy.
Yep.
I mean, we see a lot of people roll out without doing it, and it's
Mike,
questionable.
yeah, my experience in Washington here is like almost nobody else outside of the club rides and the groups that we ride in that I ever witnessed doing some kind of a pre-ride check and a beacon check. It's so rare that I witness it here in Washington State, and frankly, it's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about being the state safety chair here in the state of Washington. To me, just getting these messages out and continuing to share this thought process and through local rides and influencing other local riders, like I try to do my part to do that. And I see the difference that I'm making in the groups that I'm engaging and contacting, right? What I'm always, just like you, looking for is like, how do we get deeper into that next group, right? Like, how do we touch and talk to the people who we don't normally get to talk to? And frankly, that's where everybody here who's watching today comes in. It's about sharing shows like this and episodes like this. Share it to your page, because frankly, whether it's Todd Kramer, Dave Mole, or whoever else is watching here, one share equals at least one or two or maybe 100 different people viewing it that maybe wouldn't have viewed it otherwise, right? So just take that for what it's worth, but would encourage everybody to share. And want to encourage you guys too to start dropping in if you have any questions here too. I've been watching and tracking the comments, and there's discussions around things like airbags. So Brian, why don't you touch on airbag, backpacks and safety there around, what's your take on airbags? I know I've got my opinion on them. I wear one, but to me, they're not the bare bones necessity. Like, what I want to make sure comes across, and I know this is where you'll go with it, is they're not like, because I'm wearing an airbag, I can now go ride more epic terrain. Like, that's not what it's about. It's, same as the airbag in your car. You don't go running into walls because you can, right? Now I'm gonna live if I hit the wall. I'm gonna get an airbag in my car. I'm good to go, right? Like, no, that's not how we think about it there. Why would we think about that any differently here too? So why don't you touch a little bit for our airbags, and I'll tee up the next questions.
Yeah, for sure. So airbags. I think riding with a backpack with your avalanche rescue gear is mandatory. And so if you're going to ride with a backpack because it's mandatory, why wouldn't you ride with an airbag that could save your life?
Yep.
It's stacking the odds.
In your
It's
favor.
not, yeah, but it's not, it's like you said, it's not a miracle device. There's still trauma. There's still people that get buried. There's still people that don't get it deployed right because, no fault of their own. Like, a lot's going on. It's just another tool, another arrow in the quiver. It's just stacking those odds, and if you can add more to it, then I don't know why you wouldn't.
Yeah.
So I think airbags are incredibly worth the money and incredibly valuable. Everyone's got a different take on them. I'd be happy to do another show on airbags if you'd
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
But there's a bunch of different manufacturers, a bunch of different people think that this is the best way to go, but they all have to meet an international standard now.
Yeah.
So if you're buying one that's less than 2 years old, it's going to meet the same quality standard, minimum standards as everybody else.
Yep. And so we've got people dropping questions in here, asking questions around, what airbags and or beacons do we use personally. And so I'll go first, and I'll turn it back over to you. For me, I've used BCA beacons for quite a few years. I'm pretty comfortable with them. I was a big fan of the Tracker 2 for a long time. And as the Tracker 3 came out, what drew me to it wasn't necessarily the functionality and the usage that I liked any better. It literally was the size. So the fact that it was smaller, a little less intrusive on my, my person. But the Tracker 3 now I've been using the last couple of seasons, and overall after I've gotten used to it, pretty happy with that. And then I actually this last year have switched over to Highmark by Snowpulse airbag systems. And I would tell you I've used BCA bags in the past. I had the Pro Vest. I now have the airbag. They're all pretty darn good, right? And the main reason I've switched over to the high mark bags was based on recommendations from a friend. Somebody you probably know, Cade Beck at Snow Bag Deals. That's what he wore, and he was like, he had access to all of them. And I'm like, well, if anybody's unbiased about it, it's gonna be him. He can sell any of them and grab any of them off his shelf. And he told me about that, and so I've been wearing that one this season, and it's been incredibly comfortable. And still a big fan too of the wraparound airbag system that comes around your shoulders, just to help protect from some additional trauma, potentially leaving a little extra air pocket around your head and your face if in heaven, heaven forbid you're stuck in an avalanche. So I've been pretty happy with it this season too. But how about you? What do you use?
So, as someone who does a lot of shows and blows off a lot of bags during shows,
Yep.
your bag is my least favorite during show season.
Okay.
Shoulder straps, they can be kind of challenging to repack, but for the 99.9%, I think that's a wonderful bag. And I actually spent quite a bit of time this season in their 30-liter guide pack.
Okay.
They had gone small, small, and after some conversations, I finally, me and a few other squeaky wheels, finally got what we wanted, which was a little bit more volume. So I'm really enjoying that pack. Unlike a lot of people, I have access to a lot of equipment. The program is sponsored by BCA, Ortovox, and Snowpulse and Mammut. So we are actually tasked with riding in all of the gear
Okay.
and then being able to provide feedback to the manufacturers in a unique fashion, and as well offer to our students the ability to try different gear. Maybe if they're unhappy with something that they've purchased and they're looking to purchase something new, or maybe it's getting old and it's time to retire. Like the brand new Mammut beacon has amazing range, has some great functionality. It's got some user features that are very like high level, that it requires reading the manual a couple times, in my opinion, to be able to utilize all that it has to offer.
Yeah.
The Ortovox 3 Plus is just a really simple, easy to use, great operating, nice size beacon. I have zero complaints about all of my Ortovox gear. They've got a great shovel, a great probe, and their packs are very well designed for motorized users. I wish they would come out with a motorized version of their guide pack, because
Okay.
the ski version is just a little light. If I hit a tree hard enough, I can blow the zippers open on it.
Okay.
And I can't do that on their motorized gear. So
Okay.
for me, again, like I'm the 1%er, and then BCA, like the Tracker 4 just dropped. I think everybody's seen Mike posting videos of the Tracker 4, which is great. It's a lot of people's first exposure to it. Bigger screen, louder beep. I'm still using my Tracker 3 because it's still an amazing beacon. I've still got Tracker 2s that are just flawlessly operating for a long period of time with more button switches than probably anybody else's, except for like a factory test dummy.
Yep. Yep.
The BCA gear is fast. It's high speed, low drag, and that's really what it was designed to do, is give you accurate information right now. And I think that they really execute well on a lot of their equipment.
Nice.
The BCA bags, they continue to evolve, and BCA, just does a great job with their product. I think all three companies do.
Yeah.
I think really the difference between each company comes down to personal preference.
It's a lot like the sled manufacturers, right? I mean, like, people can argue all day long about what's the best sled brand out there, and Arctic Cat, Skidoo, Polaris, and the mountain scenes, and now Yamaha's even coming out with their version of the Mountain Max, right? But it's like, realistically, you could get on any of them and do anything you want to, as long as you're familiar with it, use it, know how to go there. Like, I'm a guy, it's pretty unique. I ride an Arctic Cat Alpha 1, and I have a Skidoo Summit. They're both great in different conditions. I like one better than the other, and just they're different, and I enjoy both of them. But it's hard to go back and forth, and so once you get used to something and you get familiar with it, whether it be a beacon or whatever, they all do an amazing job. It's no different than the sled industry. So
Exactly, and there's standards on all of it now. So really, you're getting quality. It really boils down to different manufacturers have a different kind of focus that they think is really important.
Yeah.
And if that focus aligns with you, then you found the right gear.
Yeah.
And really, it doesn't matter which brand you buy, get it out and read the manual.
Yeah.
One of the things that we see a lot is people still installing the wrong batteries, lithium ion versus alkaline.
Yeah.
And some beacons on the market have an advanced feature, and you can turn it on to a lithium ion curve. But if you don't, the default is alkaline. So
Yeah.
like, alkaline batteries have a nice linear curve to their decay rate. So you leave the truck at 72, you're going to come back at 69, and then tomorrow you're going to leave at 68, and you're going to come back at 63 and whatever, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, Lithium ion holds its voltage really well, and then it just plummets right at the end. Like think how your drills just like shut off, right?
Yep. Yep.
And so if you put the wrong batteries in, you could read 98 or 99 leaving the trailhead, and within a couple hours have dead batteries.
Exactly.
Definitely a fear. And then on top of that, we've seen some beacons get really, really funky results when operating with the wrong battery. And I don't really know why, but we've been able to duplicate beacon failures
Okay.
and then put in the right batteries, and it starts behaving normally.
Interesting. So I got a
Yeah.
couple more questions here when you're ready. So let me know when you're ready.
Don't use rechargeable batteries, and then use like a high-end name brand battery. A lot of batteries will change the length to get outside of like patent infringements,
Really?
and
Okay.
like that's one of the things they can change so that everyone can have a AAA, right? So if you get really cheapo China knockoff batteries, you can like tap your beacon like that, and you can get it to flake out.
Wow.
So just buy some quality batteries. I
Nice.
like energizers.
Yep. So do you have any thoughts on the new rechargeable battery operated fan engaging airbag systems versus the compressed airbags? Have you had any experience with any of those yet? Do you have an opinion? If not, we can keep going. But
I have both the battery and the compressed air. I don't
okay.
have any of the capacitor systems. I think that the technology is really cool, but I think it has a ways to be developed yet.
Okay.
It takes up a lot of space that would be useful for other things. And I really like we said when we were talking about bags, like the airbag is that just like killing everybody?
It's kind of killing the light. Yeah. Do you have a way to block it? There you go. That's working. For what it's worth, that's working.
I'm gonna do it this way though, so that I don't have to not wear a hat.
There you go. That works. Perfect.
So it's a last case device, right? Like it's things have gone horribly wrong, and I've completely miscalculated. And so because of that, I'm not huge on the multiple deployments. If we've made a poor decision and I had to deploy once, I'm going to change the way I'm going to ride for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
So that part isn't super critical to me. It is nice for the accidental deployments.
Yeah.
I think the reliability is still my big question mark.
Yeah.
Like, will they last the test of time that most of us require out of our gear?
Yeah. No, fair enough. So another comment here, I'm actually going to try to address it myself, is Ryan Koch is actually an upcoming guest of mine. Him and I were on the phone earlier today too. He's had a recent accident himself and ended up pinned under his sled. We're going to do a little episode on that back. I think it's on the 12th, so next Sunday is going to be his episode. But he's got a comment here that says, "I know a lot of people that say they don't need an airbag. It says they're too heavy and they can't wear it." He says, "Myself, I'm going to go to an Avi vest." So my comments there is that a lot of time, and I've actually had this conversation with a lot of different folks, is if people feel like these Avi bags or a backpack is too heavy on their back or their shoulder, most of the time what I experience is they're just not wearing it right? Like most really good backpacks, whether it's an Avi bag or a good backpack, has a good waist harness, a good waist, and if you cinch that down on your waist and you get it to hold that weight off of you, it makes a huge difference. And then you can kind of get it around your shoulders, and it's not pulling on your shoulders. Because usually when people complain about the bags, it's that weight on their shoulders that they're experiencing when they're riding. That's part of the reason also I've gone to a vest is I noticed back from when I went from my first BCA backpack airbag to the Pro vest, that made a tremendous difference by itself. And then that's one of the things I love about my new Highmark vest is the Spire vest is it just fits you like a glove and it's super comfortable. And frankly, after I put all my crap in it, it's still a really heavy bag. Not because the bag itself is heavy, but just because of all the crap I put in it. And it's amazing. Like, my wife goes to grab it to take it out the truck and she can barely lift the damn thing sometimes, right? But it's like, when I'm wearing it all day, I forget I'm wearing it. Actually, it's because it's so well balanced and weight distributed over my whole body, and I can cinch it down and adjust it. Like, that's really the big difference. So, have you had similar experiences, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, they weigh more than nothing, right?
Yeah.
So it's an argument. But I feel like if you don't want to wear that equipment, then you shouldn't be in the backcountry because without that backpack, you're not going to have your shoulder probe on
Exactly.
your person. You're not somebody that most of the people I know want to ride with in the backcountry. There's just too much risk.
Amen.
Um, the a few people who had shoulder injuries, like previous shoulder injuries, struggle with range of motion with a backpack, and the vests were actually worse.
Okay.
But like every person who's ever made that argument to me, it was a matter of like, and again, like super fortunate to be sponsored by so many wonderful safety providers in the industry because they're making that comment. And I'm like, really, have you tried this bag? Because like,
Yeah.
you're a broad-shouldered individual. I think you might like this one better. It won't pinch on your neck or whatever
Yeah.
their complaint is. And
Yeah.
it's a matter of taking the time to go try them out. Come to a show where I am and you can try all of them. Or, I tell people go to your dealership and just take your normal riding gear with you
Yep.
and just like grab one of their backpacks off the shelf and just start loading it with all your junk and put it on and then like run around the store like a lunatic. See
Yep.
if it doesn't fit good, it's going to become closet art. And
Yeah.
then it's just a wasted, what, 500 to 1,000.
Yeah.
There's no point in spending that money if you're just going to hang
Yeah.
it in the closet and forget about it.
Yep. So, well, Brian, I think for the most part we've accomplished what we wanted to tonight. I'm not seeing any other new questions coming in, but just let folks know that if they're watching this, even as a replay, feel free to drop a question in here. Brian and I will continue to watch this over the next week or two and try to answer as many questions as we can. And specifically, if in your comments, if you're tagging us in your comments, we'll make sure we come back and address any questions you might have. Any final thoughts or words, Brian, about last Friday's accident and or just this topic in general?
I think it's just important to remember when we're all playing Saturday morning quarterback, from our armchairs at home, to be respectful of, nobody set out to hurt anyone. No one set out to make sure they couldn't come out again tomorrow.
Yeah.
They had the right intentions. There was just an accident. And so if we can learn from it in a positive way, then we save lives. If we turn into the typical Facebook belligerent people, then nobody gains from it. So try to be helpful in the situation and maybe help other people glean the knowledge that you have.
Yep. Yep. And what I'll just add to the conversation here too is that something whether it be the coronavirus epidemic that we're all going through, it's affecting different parts of the countries in different ways. Whether it be Rob's accident, like I'm always trying to be very sensitive to whatever the current environment is. And, when I do an episode, I want to at least acknowledge what happened, what's going on, pay my respects, share my own love for, the person who was involved or the situation that we're in. And just trying to make a difference, right? Like I hope everybody understands and knows that, very intentionally, Brian's an avalanche instructor and a trainer, and yeah, he charges for avalanche classes and training. But I will tell you what, out of all the people in the industry that I've seen, Brian is probably about the biggest like net neutral guy I know. Like he invests as much into this as he ever gets out of it and stuff back into it. And so the money you've invested in the trailers and the education and the time and the effort and the relationships, like I guarantee you, if you go net, you're underwater on this whole thing. But you're doing it out of passion and love. And I'm kind of in the same boat here. Like, I don't make any money out of doing this show or anything. It's really out of true love and passion for this sport. The folks and the titles that you see above us, the different folks who sponsor me and the show, just like you, it's all about them wanting to help continue this message, continue the education, continue to push this out. That's why they're here. That's why they're part of this. It's no different than whether you're wearing a Caliber shirt or an FXR hat. It's just these are the companies that really understand what it takes to make sure that we're getting this training and education out there, and they're investing in that so that we can bring you guys this kind of content. And I really do truly hope that it lands with all of you the way Brian and I intend it to, right? It really is out of compassion, out of love for the sport, out of love for Rob Kincaid and his family. No disrespect whatsoever was intended by this topic whatsoever at night. It was actually the opposite of that. It was out of honoring him and trying to help educate others to potentially avoid. And we don't even know what happened for sure, right? It could have been a malfunctioning beacon. There could have been other things going on. But bottom line is I know this topic comes up regularly as to how does this happen? Why could this happen? And we've walked you through some different scenarios tonight to be able to give you some thoughts that maybe you guys can take some changes in your procedures, your routines, all of those things. Hopefully you can take away tonight. So that's all I've got to say, Brian. Any final other thoughts?
I think that's it, John. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. Like you, I'm very much a volunteer in the industry. So,
Yep.
Yeah, keep up the hard work, buddy.
All right, sounds good, brother. You can hang on there for a minute. I'm going to go ahead and wind the show down. So, God bless everybody. Live large, and don't forget, we've got another show here in under an hour. So at 7 p.m. Pacific time, just almost 50 minutes from now, 55 minutes from now, I'll be having on the Tahoe Snowmobilers Snowmobile Club. So I've got the president and one of the other board members on tonight, and they were just recently in one of your classes, I understand, huh? At least some of the guys were out there. Yep.
Yeah, I think they were. I don't know exactly, but who the other member is, but the president was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Came
Yes.
all the way from Colorado to take a class in Colorado.
Perfect. So we'll be talking to him here in less than an hour, and everybody can tune back in for that. And we're doing double back-to-back episodes tonight just because of some incredible topics that we had to take advantage of. So, all right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate y'all.
Thanks, John.